Hey guys, it's Rich Boy J here, back in with another video, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on Solo: A Star Wars Story. Before I get into the actual thoughts, I want to give you guys a little idea of how I approach Star Wars movies. This, I feel, will help you understand my position on the movie and kind of where I come from. All of us have different things that make us love and hate Star Wars, and understanding where I come from will give you guys a better idea of why I feel the way I do about the movie. The biggest thing for me with Star Wars movies is that it takes me on an emotional roller coaster, and that I actually emotionally connect with the characters. The characters, I feel, guide the Star Wars movies. Without compelling characters, it's really just a bunch of cool looking ships and action sequences with no real substance to it. So while those things are all, very cool, obviously we have our favorite ships in the Star Wars universe, I feel that the characters are what ultimately drives the movies and what make us all have a special place in our heart that Star Wars holds. So that's kind of where I come from when it comes to Star Wars movies. That being said, let's actually talk about the movie. First, I'll start with the positive things about it. The most important thing to me about this movie was that it made me emotionally connect with the characters and actually feel things. It certainly accomplished that. Rogue One, I felt, was not a great movie because I didn't emotionally connect with the characters. The most gut-wrenching moment was when K2SO died, and he was just a droid. He wasn't even an actual human. So the fact that this movie actually made me resonate with the characters and feel their pain, feel their plight, and also feel their happiness was a very good thing about the movie for me, and it ultimately made me enjoy whatever the characters went through. I honestly feel like as long as the characters are compelling and they're growing in the movies and you see them kind of develop due to the things that happen around them, the movie isn't so much about what actually happens, but more so about the journey that the character is going through and what is happening to them. So I thought that Solo did a very good job with this. One of the things that I just loved was the opening sequence when Han and Qi'ra are both running through the Imperial checkpoint, trying to get off of Corellia. Han goes to the door. Qi'ra is grabbed as soon as she's about to go through it. It was just so heartbreaking whenever that happened, and I really felt for Han. I felt that that's a side of Han that we don't really ever get to see, him actually just genuinely sad. He seems to just kind of brush off everything that happens to him in the original trilogy that may emotionally hurt him. That was actually really nice, and it kind of drove his motivations moving forward in the movie. He had a plan. He wanted to get a ship and go back and get the love of his life. So it was nice to see, he obviously had a motivation, he had something he was trying to accomplish, and ultimately the movie was us rooting for him to accomplish his goal. Of course, Qi'ra ends up just being on Drayden's yacht, and I'm not really sure how I felt about that. It seemed a little too convenient. I understand that Star Wars movies are ultimately going to be very convenient because that's the way a movie has to progress, but that just seemed like, for something that was just, so built up, like I want to go back, I want to get her, and for her to just conveniently be on this ship that he ends up on, it seemed a little too convenient. I felt I probably wouldn't have had as big of a problem with this if I didn't kind of anticipate that it was coming, because we saw the scenes in the trailers where they're talking to each other, and it's obviously on Drayden's yacht. But the fact that I kind of knew it was coming, I was just like, wait, she's gonna be here. Like, there's no real surprise to this. Like, I know she's somewhere on that yacht. So I feel maybe if that scene wasn't in the trailer, I wouldn't be as annoyed with it, but it's not really a huge problem. I don't think it would make or break the movie for me. I just thought it was a little too convenient. One of the other things I really liked about the movie was the growth of Han Solo and Chewbacca's relationship. This was something that I feel had to be done well. These are two very adored characters, and if you didn't get this right, a lot of people were going to have big problems with it. The fact that they kind of harkened back to the Legends lore of Han essentially rescuing Chewbacca from enslavement, I thought was a very nice thing for them to bring forward. There are some great things in Legends. There are some not so great things in Legends. So they obviously, I feel, picked something that was definitely worth keeping into Star Wars canon. And I thought their meeting was just so cool. I remember sitting there in the theater and they say, oh, feed him to the beast. And I had no clue it was going to be Chewbacca. It didn't even cross my mind, but I thought it was a very clever way to get them to meet. I did not think it was clever, however, that Han was actually speaking to him in his native Wookiee language, especially since Chewbacca understands Basic. I feel that he could have related to him in some other way. It just looked so goofy seeing Han Solo speaking in the Wookiee language, especially since he never does it again in any of the other movies. It just seemed like a bit much. I also kind of had some reservations with the idea that humans can actually speak Wookiee. I feel like it's the equivalent of like me barking to my dog. Like I feel like humans just don't have the vocal inflections to be able to do that. But once again, kind of a nitpicky thing, not something that's going to make or break the movie for me. One of the last things that I really enjoyed about the movie was the dynamic between Han Solo and Tobias Beckett. Beckett was definitely my favorite new character. I was really concerned when they initially killed off Val and L3. I thought that the movie was going to be, and also Rio. I thought it was going to be an ensemble film, and you would see these characters go through a multitude of adventures and missions together. But once you kind of see how the movie plays out, you understand that those other three characters aren't really important to Han Solo's growth, so they were ultimately not going to add too much to the movie. Tobias, however, is a very critical component of like where Han Solo ends up at the end of the movie, and ultimately what we see later on in the original trilogy and sequel trilogy movies. So it made sense for him, like for Han's interactions with that initial group, to just be dwindled down to between him and Beckett. I thought it made a lot of sense. I also liked that, Han was, trying to convince himself that he wanted to be a certain kind of person. He wanted to be an outlaw. He wanted to be the bad guy, essentially. And we all know that that's not him. And we see him kind of struggle with this even in the original trilogy. So I did think it was a really sweet moment when he's talking to Kira and she's like, I know what you really are. You're the good guy. And it's so true, and I feel that anyone who really loves Han could tell that about him. But obviously, this is kind of the inception of his character. He's still trying to convince himself that he's something that he's not. He's seen the plight in the galaxy. He doesn't want to be, the person who's taken advantage of or the person who's betrayed. But ultimately, like, that's not him. He's going to have compassion. He's going to find people he cares about, and he's going to be the guy who comes back and does the right thing as long as he sees fit. So I really did appreciate that about his character in the movie. One of the things I also appreciated about the movie was that it was its own self-contained story, and it didn't need to be over the top and have galactic-wide repercussions. I feel that with these standalone movies, you're going to have to figure out a way to make the stakes relatively low, because they obviously can't interfere with things that have been previously set up by the saga movies, but they have to be important enough to the character for you to get invested into the movie. I thought that they successfully did this. I felt that in some of the action sequences that, it had me on the edge of my seat. There was certainly tension there, and that ultimately, like, I wanted to see Han succeed in some way. I obviously knew where Han was going to end up. We knew he wasn't going to die, or that he wasn't going to, have something catastrophic happen to him, but I still felt that there were stakes in the movie and that I was invested in seeing where he would go in the movie. So I thought that was a good thing. One of the other things that I also liked about it was that there was minimal Imperial involvement. Obviously, it was very difficult to avoid the Empire at this point, as at this point they would have been, expanding into different planets, taking over, getting rid of insurgents, stuff like that. But they didn't kind of drive the movie. They weren't the main antagonists, which I really appreciated. The Empire has been the main antagonist of so many different forms of Star Wars, whether it be movies, books, comics, TV shows. I was glad to see something that wasn't just centered around, oh, the Empire's so bad, let's try to stop them some way. I got enough of that in Rebels. So I was glad that this movie focused on an antagonist that was very real and felt very threatening, but wasn't the Empire. So they built up the Crimson Dawn to be, very threatening. They talked about all the bad things that they did. They made him seem to be someone, you didn't really want to mess with. But that was still self-contained. Like, it didn't seem like, oh, why haven't we seen these people before if they're so big and bad? They seem to be very relevant in the circle of things that were happening around Han Solo. I am not a fan at all of them once again throwing Darth Maul back into Star Wars. Look, we got enough of him in the Clone Wars. We got enough of him in Rebels. Some would even argue we got enough of him in Episode 1. He was a completely hollow character that simply looked cool, and they kept trying to retcon their mistakes by killing him off too early, by throwing him into all these other animated series, and ultimately he was not that important of a character initially. So for them to once again put him into the movie, like, it's so goofy. It was such an out of place scene. I felt that it was done purely for shock value, which is I guess sometimes okay, but when it's this over the top and this out of place, it seemed like a desperate attempt to get back the fans who are like, oh, why don't they reference the prequels enough? Why aren't they making more references to the prequels? Disney hates the prequels, so they're like, okay, let's just throw Darth Maul in there just because. And I wouldn't have a problem with it if I felt that that it made sense, but that this character that they decided to put into the story actually had something unique to contribute that would help Han Solo's growth. But I don't get the impression that that's where this came from. I don't get the impression that they were like, okay, like, who's a character that we can really help have interact with Han Solo and help shape him into the character that we know in the original trilogy. I feel like that should be the ultimate goal of the movie. If the movie's doing something that's not accomplishing that, then it's wasting its time. Because this is the Solo movie. This movie is built around developing Han Solo. For them to just throw Darth Maul in, someone who I don't think has anything to contribute to the Han Solo story, I feel was just a desperate attempt for them to try to win back the prequel fans. And I thought that was just silly. It was so over the top. It was so out of place. Whenever I first saw it, I laughed. I laughed so hard. It was just so goofy. I literally could not believe what I was seeing on screen. I am not a fan of this at all. I am so done with Darth Maul. This literally seemed like something Dave Filoni would do. And I like some things that Dave Filoni does, but sometimes he goes way over the top with just trying to throw characters in that we know just for the sake of throwing them in. I think that's just so ridiculous and over the top, and was not a fan of this at all. And my next criticism is really an extension of my Darth Maul point, which is something I'm actually really concerned about for these standalone movies moving forward, and it's the references. So obviously the Darth Maul thing was just kind of thrown in there to make a reference to the prequels and have a character that a lot of people really care about, and I'm really concerned about that for these movies moving forward. I feel that this movie just kind of, made a point to reference a lot of things that, you may have heard of before, like the, like Felucia and Aurra Sing and Bossk and stuff like that. And I mean, I guess it was interesting, but I don't want for these standalone movies to be characterized by that. And I feel that, like, in that sense, like, the Solo movie doesn't seem like one that is very rewatchable. Like, after seeing it, I didn't feel like, oh, I need to go see it again, or let me go try to catch up on all these things I missed. I felt like I mainly watched the movie just to see what happened. And once I knew what happened, that was sufficient. I didn't need to go rewatch it. I don't need to go see certain sequences again because I know what's going to happen. I know how it affects Han Solo. And I don't want that to be what the standalone movies are, just giving us information. I feel that, it should be, like I said, some sort of emotional journey. If it's not that, then it's like I could just read the information in a textbook. I feel that it should ultimately be a lot more than that. So it's kind of something I'm concerned about with the standalone movies moving forward, especially now that they're doing a Boba Fett movie. Like, once again, I don't just need to see a movie where I see a bunch of stuff and I'm like, oh, I know what that is. Oh, I recognize that. Oh, I've heard of that before. And oh, this stuff happens and now I know what happened. Like, I want to be taken on a journey. I want to learn new things about the universe, and I want to, see things that I haven't seen before. And the Solo movie, like, kind of offered that, but of course it was centered around a bunch of characters we already knew going into the movie, and in that case, it was kind of hampered by that. So while I did like the movie, I don't want to see more Solo movies. They kind of left the ending of it open for, I guess, I don't know, maybe a sequel, and they've kind of made a point to say that it could be a series of movies. I have no interest in seeing that. I felt like I saw all I needed to see about Han Solo in the original trilogy, and I saw definitely all I needed to see about Han Solo in this movie. I don't need to see more going forward. I would very much so appreciate for them to just go into characters we haven't seen before, go into plot points we haven't seen before. The galaxy is a very big place. We don't need to just characterize Star Wars by making references to things we've already seen. We should be actively looking towards showing us new places, showing us new things, not just giving us more information on things that were really just throwaway lines in the original movies they came from. So I don't want that to be what the standalone movies are characterized for. Rogue One kind of got at that. Solo really got at that. And it just kind of puts me in a place where it makes me look even less forward to the standalone movies. So with all that being said, guys, those are my general impressions on the Solo movie. Let me know what you guys think about it. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Post your thoughts in it. And that's going to finish up the video today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Of course, if you like what I do, go ahead, support the video by hitting the like button, support the channel by hitting the subscribe button, and please stay tuned. I'll be back again with more content. Gonna have a crate update coming up on Sunday. It's gonna be pretty dope because we got it packed at the convention right now. Can't wait to show you guys kind of how that journey happened, how it turned out and got to the convention. So see you guys really soon.